So with that in mind, let's talk about the home buying process itself. So believe it or not, all of this, depending on who you're working with as a lender, can take as little as 30 days. Average is about 45, a longer is 60, and then of course everything is negotiable. For those of you who are not getting financing, if you're paying in cash, the fastest you can close is 3 weeks, sometimes 2 weeks, depending on who you're working with and as an attorney and how quickly they can get your title exam back. So plan for about 30 to 45 days, I would say. So what is the first thing that you're going to want to do? It is consult with a buyer's agent. I know that sounds self-serving as an agent myself, but let me tell you why. So your agent is going to be your anchor contact throughout this process. This is the person you spend the most time with looking at property. They're going to be helping you strategize, and they're going to be your go-between between all the different parties working for you. Once the deal goes underway, there's a loan officer, there's an underwriter, there's a closing attorney, there's the other attorney, there's your home inspector. And a good real estate agent is going to make it feel seamless and stress-free for you because they're going to help you navigate all of these different relationships, and they're going to be your go-to person. So you want to make sure that you find an agent. I recommend, interview a few of them, make sure that they have the credentials you're looking for, knowledgeable about the market in general, and a couple, and really ideally a number of different areas, because it's very rare these days that you're looking in one neighborhood of Boston, or one neighborhood of Cambridge or Somerville, or one town for that matter. Most people are looking at a couple of different towns. So when you have that initial conversation or interview, if you will, a few things that are important to happen. The first one is that a Massachusetts agency disclosure needs to be presented to you. This is actually a Massachusetts state law. So as someone who holds a real estate license, I am bound by Massachusetts to explain to you at our first meeting via this agency disclosure form of your rights as a consumer. So you should know that a real estate agent has a fiduciary responsibility to you to do everything in your best interest. So not only is it the law to bring this up, it also is going to set the tone for your working relationship. So very important that that happens. You also want to talk about some of the more fun stuff, what you're looking for, and always why. Why are you looking for that? Because in a low inventory environment, it's important to open up a few different doors and avenues of maybe some areas you didn't think about that hit your whys and are able to increase your budget, your buying power rather. And then also you want to learn about the process of finding a home. So it's going to be a combination of you reviewing automated listings that are coming through the MLS, and then also the agent, again, depending on the agent you work with, but the agent should be sourcing potential off-market property and property that's coming soon to the market to, again, increase your options and give you a head start of the competition. So after you meet with that buyer's agent, it's then a good idea to connect with a loan officer. And I usually only connect my clients with loan officers who are with companies that only do mortgages. And there's a number of them around here. The reason for that is, unfortunately, some of these larger banks they're notorious for not closing on time because they don't have one underwriter, one processor that's working for them. So when push comes to shove and you have 5 digits on the line, you have your mortgage, your second deposit due, you can't get a hold of anyone. It's not their money on the line. It's your money on the line. So you need to make sure that you're working with someone who, 1, can close in 30 days, 2, is ideally with a company that only does mortgages, 3, they have their own processor and underwriter. It doesn't go to a pool. They have a couple of people that they work with that are direct to their team, and someone who's extremely responsive. So if you signed up to be in the residential real estate industry, you are working on the weekends. If your lender does not work on the weekends, that's a problem, because that is when we're submitting our offers. That's when we're asking for pre-approvals. That's when all the action happens, or most of the time at least. So I would really recommend that you find someone who has these attributes. And you're going to want to get pre-approved, and you want to get pre-approved right away, particularly in this market, because there's two things that go into your credit rating. It's going to be, or excuse me, your interest rate for your loan. And it's going to be what interest rates are trading at. That's a number that changes daily. So there will be some fluctuation. And then it's also going to be based on your profile as a borrower. So, and what goes into that is your debt to income, your credit score, how many assets you have, how much you're putting down. So with the pre-approval process, a couple of things are expected. You need your 2 recent pay stubs, recent bank statements, 401k statements if you have that. So basically any qualified or non-qualified investment accounts, any proof of additional assets, and your tax returns. If you are not a W-9 employee, then you will need obviously your tax returns, you'll need your 1099s, and you do need 2 years of income, proof of income in your 1099 employed job prior to being able to purchase a home. So all of this goes into your application. You do get a hard pull on your credit. And know that makes everyone nervous, because hard pulls mean they ding our credit score. It's a necessary evil, but there are things that you can do in order to mitigate that. So 1, talk to a couple of different professionals, and in that initial pre-approval, when you're ready to sign up the application, have that be your main loan officer. And if you're worried about interest rates, then what I recommend to clients is that once you have an offer, that's when you shop rates. And the reason for that is because you're not going to have, or your rate rather is irrelevant until you have an offer accepted, because rates change constantly. So you want to work with someone who's super responsive. They can run scenarios for you as we're doing the process and as you're thinking about submitting offers. And then once that offer is accepted, should you choose, you feel like you need to rate shop, that's when you do it. You do it in a matter of a few days, in a really, really tight window and in a few days, because how the credit bureau will interpret those credit pulls is that it'll say, oh, okay, they're shopping for rates. They're looking for the best deal because it's happening so quickly. If you decide to talk to a different lender once a month, you're drawing the process out, the credit bureaus are going to interpret that as, oh, wow, they really having a tough time to get a loan. And it's going to have a larger impact in your credit. So that's what I usually recommend. But ideally, you end up working with someone who has shown that they're competitive right away. I know that a lot of the loan officers I recommend, when it's time for you to lock, usually they start off with a more conservative number when we're budgeting. And when it's time for you to lock, they go right to corporate for the exception to get you the lowest rate possible. So then the fun part happens. We start looking at properties. So this is glorified shopping, as I like to say, and we can have a lot of adventures along the way. So what's really important as we look at property is that not only do you need to feel comfortable with the home, does it need to feel right? There is a psychological element to purchasing a home, and we have to honor that. Sometimes a home might check all the boxes, but for whatever reason, you don't want to put an offer on it, and that's okay. The other aspect that's very important is that we need to do as much due diligence as we can with all of our senses. So we need to be looking at the structure. We need to be looking at what type of siding is there? What's going on with the trim outside? Is it rotted? Is it aluminum trim, but the rest of it is vinyl? How is the condition of the roof? They said the roof is 10 years old, but it's a 3-tab shingle, and I see it crumbling off. Are there gutters? Some homes, we really need gutters in New England. And I was looking at a property with clients, and oh my God, they took the gutters off. How are they living? So some historical homes don't have gutters, and you need to find ways to work around that. So we want to be looking at the foundation, the electric, the plumbing. Is there sloping in the floors? A lot of the homes we're looking at are 100 years old. And if they haven't gone anywhere, usually they're in really good shape. But if we see floors that are coming in all at the same level versus just a little bit of unevenness here and there, that's when there can be a structural issue. And that's where we go to the basement and confirm what's going on with our main beam, what's going on with our lally columns, and try to get a better understanding of what you're going to be in for should you move forward with the home. So this is really to set you up for success, to make sure you're putting an offer on a property with your eyes wide open and with an understanding of what are some things you're going to have to do right away when you purchase this property. Because the home inspection is really for surprises, and we want to be surprised as little as possible. So let's say we've looked at a lot of property, usually need to look at a lot of property for context to make this decision, and we're ready to make an offer. So we've talked about offer strategy, and how I operate is as we look at property, I share strategy ideas with you, even if we're not interested in it. So you can get an idea of some of the different tools we can use. And that way, when you're ready to pull the trigger, you're feeling more comfortable and you're able to make an educated decision. So it's always, I provide, and any agent provides advisement, and you make a decision as to what's best for you. There are ways that we can get the house, but you don't have to take advantage of that if it doesn't feel right for you. So we've talked about offer strategy. We're feeling good. We're putting in the offer. A couple of things go into that. That Massachusetts agency disclosure, believe it or not, you've probably forgotten about that. Your pre-approval, lead paint if the home was built prior to 1970. The offer itself, which talks about how much we're going to give and our various deposits and timeline. The contingencies document, which its standard is home inspection and financing. And when we submit a picture of an $1,000 check made out to whoever is holding escrow, usually the listing office, or it can be the seller's attorney. And so if this offer is accepted, that check gets deposited into the escrow account. Neither side can access it until the property closes. And it's only if the offer is accepted. So let's say we get the offer accepted. What happens? Well, this is what I like to tell my clients. It can get hot and heavy. It's a little intense in this period because a lot happens in really just 7 days or less. So 3 things need to happen simultaneously. Schedule a home inspection, connect you to a real estate attorney, and get that $1,000 offer deposit deposited as soon as possible, because that is what binds the sellers to it. It's what's called our conveyance, and it makes the seller legally bound to us. We got to get that offer deposit sent over there. So the real estate attorney is because they're going to be taking care of the next contract, which is due in about a week. And they're also going to represent you at closing. And we want to get the home inspection scheduled as soon as possible because we need time to do additional due diligence in case anything comes up. So what happens with the home inspection is that it's a default inspection. So it is literally the inspector's job to not even find anything good about the property. I had clients once who said, "Do you like anything?" He's like, "Well, that's not my job, but yeah, I do." So the default inspection, we want it to be that way. Even the best kept homes will have a 40-page thick inspection report. So don't be intimidated. We want it to be that thorough. We need this to happen in a couple of days because remember, an inspector is a generalist. So they might say, okay, I opened up the electric panel. This looks full to me. This doesn't look right. And he's going to write it up in his report. If we decide this is something we need to negotiate on, and if it's an electric problem, usually it is, we then bring in an electrician and they evaluate it and say, well, actually, this is how it's supposed to be done. That rarely happens, but sometimes it can happen. Or the electrician will say, nope, this needs to get fixed and this is how much it's going to cost. So I always like to talk, as we're going through an inspection report, there's a 3 F's. We fund it, meaning the seller pays for the repairs, or we negotiate that. Nothing is guaranteed. The seller fixes it, meaning they fix it prior to closing. They show proof it was done by the professional we requested, or we forget it. So, with that 40-page, we're not presenting them with the whole inspection report and asking them to do everything. we think about, okay, what was not visible to us during the showing? What is something we need to address immediately before moving in? Is it working? Is it a safety issue? Is it an immediate structural issue? So those are the kind of things that we work around. So the attorney is going to be negotiating with the other attorney on the purchase and sale, making sure you're protected with that language, and they're going back and forth with you with drafts. Simultaneously, I'm working on the follow-up from the home inspection and negotiating with the listing agents. Once we come together on all of those items, we're ready to sign. So usually that happens in about 7 days. And just remember that real estate operates on days. It's not business days. It's days. So there's no rest for the weary in this business. So we're ready to sign the purchase and sale. This is your second contract, and your second deposit is due. It's typically 5% of the purchase price minus $1,000. So in that escrow account is being held a total of 5%. It goes towards your total purchase price, and neither party has access to it until the end of the closing. Now, if something happened during the inspection and you decided to walk away with something you weren't willing to deal with, you're going to get your $1,000 back. The next contingency is your financing contingency, and that protects the totality of your deposits, that full 5%. So your mortgage contingency is typically due about 3 weeks after the purchase and sale. And it's a really important date because it protects that 5% deposit. Really why it exists is because, God forbid, if your circumstances change, and there are things that we can not control in life, but your circumstances change, you can no longer get a loan. As long as we notify the other party prior to that date, then you are entitled to get all of your deposits back. And so that's why it's really important to work with a lender who is very, very responsive, very, very on top of things. Because if we're a day before this date, we can't get an answer to them as to whether you have a clean commitment or not. You're the one who has this, $20,000, $50,000, $75,000 on the line to lose. So it's a very important date, but don't worry, no one from Holy Cross ever misses it. So you'll be all set. And then depending on whether we're closing in 30 days or 45 days, we will then conduct our final walkthrough and our closing on the same day. So I always recommend doing them on the same day. It maximizes your recourse. So for example, if we decided to do the final walkthrough 2 days before the closing and a tree falls on the house, or the seller decides to take a sledgehammer and smash every door, the second one has happened. So don't ever be shocked. Then you don't have any recourse because you already did your final walkthrough. So if we do the final walkthrough on the day of the closing, we maximize our recourse. And if anything happens, we can then negotiate for monetary concession. So for example, my clients it was actually tenants who were living there, who smashed holes through all the doors, we were able to get a monetary concession to compensate for him buying new doors. And so then basically you sign paperwork for about an hour and you own a house. So sometimes the closing can be a bit anticlimactic. You're like, I had all these ups and downs and I got offered, rejected. And now I just sign my name, 50 times and I own a house. So once all the paperwork is signed, it then goes to the Registry of Deeds. It needs to be recorded by the registry, which is per county, prior to you getting the keys. So that's why it's important that we go during the morning, because we want that paperwork to get into the registry as soon as possible so you can get your keys and you can enjoy your new home. Because no matter what county it is, it seems that people who work at Registry of Deeds, and I hope no one is in the audience who works at the Registry of Deeds, but it seems like, maybe you can educate us otherwise, it seems like they take a lunch at 1 and they don't come back. So we don't get that paperwork in before noon. Often you're not getting your keys that day. So it's just that easy, my friends. In 30 days, 45 days, you can be a homeowner.